Situation. My name is Umar Rusandamadu and you're welcome to Face to Face. My guest was involved in governance activities before being appointed Deputy Chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education, and she since graduated to be the Chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education. Madam Kathleen Addy is my guest. You're welcome to Face to Face.
Thank you very much, Umar.
How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. How does it feel like sitting at this side of the table? Because when you were with
I used to be on that side.
Yeah, you were on CDD. I mean,
yes.
So that was the governance institutions. You dealt with all these state institutions,
yeah.
But now you are the state institution and you have to be dealing with how is the change of setting?
Oh, it's certainly interesting, but it also gives me an advantage in the work that I do right now. So it's all working out pretty well.
So you do miss your old space?
Oh yes, I do.
But you learned from there and you're using that to guide
I learned
business.
so much from my career over the years. Before I worked in CDD, I worked in the Center for Policy Analysis, CEPA.
Oh, Joabe CEPA.
Yes,
okay.
I worked in Joabe CEPA for a very long time, and then before that, I worked as an activist, as a gender activist, doing a whole range of things. So all that has prepared me for where I sit today, I think.
Let's talk about the Constitution, then we'll come and talk about the NCCE. So 30 years ago, a group of people through a college decided to give us this document, and we voted to approve it as our document that guides us. What is the trajectory? What has the trajectory been like from where you sit, both as someone who was outside working for a constitutional body and inside? How have you been seeing our constitutional space? Okay.
Well, before I get to how the Constitution has fared, I always like to go back to what it was like before the Constitution, and I think that's a better starting point than to say, if you're trying to assess the Constitution, you have to look at what was before. And you know that since independence till before the Fourth Republic, we lived in very turbulent political times. And you know the history of coups, attempted republics, overthrows, military interventions, and all kinds of turbulence. And by the time we got to 1992, we had been under military rule or military dictatorship for quite a number of years. And there was general consensus that it was time to step out of that shadow and make another attempt at a democratic republic. And that's what we did with the Fourth Republic, the 1992 Constitution. And since then, we've had 30 years of stability. I always like to do the contrast because it's important. People take the fact that it's been a stable country for 30 years. We can fall into the trap of taking it for granted and acting as if it's no big deal. But it's actually a very big deal if you look at our immediate history, our post-colonial history. It's a huge deal to go 30 years. This is the only 30-year stretch since independence.
The first one was, 9 years, and then Nkrumah, he went away, then Achampo was even a military dictator. Then Hila Liman came, was just 1 year or so, 2 years, and then he goes down. And then I think Buzia's time from 69 to 72, that's 3 years.
2.5 years.
So we have 9 years on Nkrumah, 3 years Buzia, then 1 or 2 years Liman, and this is 30 years. So it's worth celebrating.
It is totally worth celebrating. And the other thing I always say is that we don't live in a perfect republic. I don't think anybody in the world does, but there's a lot more we can do. Over the past 30 years, in addition to political stability, we've actually also had made economic progress on the economic front. If you look at our GDP before the Fourth Republic and our GDP, as in the time of the Fourth Republic, we've grown in leaps and bounds. A lot of our indicators have improved. And so I don't think it's all bad. I think it's mostly good. There's a lot to celebrate. We have built institutions. They are not perfect, but they are working. We've held elections every 4 years. The winners have moved on. The losers have either accepted or gone or taken the legal route in terms of a challenge. And so these things are all elements of democracy, and of a people that are determined to stay on the democratic path, and the people that are reaping some benefits of the democratic path. And so I think that it hasn't been perfect, but we've come a long way, and it hasn't been bad. I would not say it's bad at all. What I do agree, though, is that it is said that the Constitution is supposed to be a living document. And so there comes a time, and maybe the time is now. Maybe the time was in 2010 when we had the Constitutional Review Commission. But there comes a time when we need to review the document. A lot has happened over the past 30 years. I mean, the Ghana of even 2000 is radically different from the Ghana of today. A lot of things have changed, and society has moved forward in a particular way. And so we should relook at the Constitution. We should do the work of identifying what needs to be changed. And a lot of that work has been done already, by the way.
I'll let us talk about it. Seems that the work of the Commission, I don't know if you were involved in the Constitution,
no.
You were not, but you have played
I was in CDD at the time, and I think we did a parallel CRC, and there's a report there.
So let us talk about that, but I'm still interested in the Constitution. So it's still a developing Constitution, because when it started, it said institutions like NCCE should be set up, Electoral Commission, all of these ones. It also said there should be free, compulsory, universal basic education. It took us time before we rolled that out. It talked about free senior high school. We are experiencing that now. But there are still things that we haven't seen fully implemented yet by this Constitution. So there's still work in the Constitution.
A lot of work to be done. There's a lot of work to be done. Personally, I think that the election of MMDCs, for me, is the big thing that is a big omission right now. It takes away from our achievements as a democracy, the fact that we do not elect the heads of local government, because people must experience democracy in real time. And the only way you do that is if you elect your immediate official who has oversight over your community, somebody you can see on a daily basis, somebody whose office is right there with you in the district. And so for me, that is one of the big omissions that we must quickly work on as a country and get it done.
You've talked about GDP, the economic growth that we witnessed. Anytime the soldiers overthrew the Constitution in the past, they cited economic reasons. We are currently in an economic turmoil, but it appears people want the Constitution to stay and still let things move out the way they are supposed to be. No one is asking the soldiers to intervene. But what about anti-Constitution people who say if there was a dictatorship, we wouldn't get to where we've got into? It is because we say democracy, and some group of people sit in Parliament and approve bills, and some people sit in Jubilee House and go and contract loans. That's why we have been burdened with what we've been burdened with. And so it's better if we didn't have a Constitution. What would you say to such a critic?
Well, there are lots of things to say to such a critic. First of all, to say that democracy is not an event. It's something that you work really hard at to achieve. It's been said to be the worst form of government except the rest, and in terms of the history and the practice, it's the one that has, given results to a lot of different countries. The whole thing about a democracy is that the decision-making process emanates from it's involving, and it goes from bottom up.
Yeah, but the argument is that that's too laborious. That wastes a lot of time. Before budgets are approved, you have to go through all that.
But what is to say that speeding through that will yield any better results for us? There's no guarantee of that anyway.
People think that bureaucracies are just too many, and these are because of democracy. So if there's no bureaucracy,
but if you're going to go down that road, then even a military dictatorship has a bureaucracy, because you need systems to work. You cannot achieve anything in a state of chaos. No matter what form of government you have, you're going to have systems. You're going to have a decision-making process. which may be different from a democratic process, but there will be a process. And you better pray when you have a military dictatorship that there is a process, because it will also be decision making according to the whims and caprices of one person. And so we have to look at all of those things, broad in the broad context, and look at what the options are. I think that people are impatient with the hard work that is required to build a democracy. And that is perfectly understandable, because everybody wants to see the dividends, because you're putting in so much, you're paying your taxes, you're trying to be a good citizen. You want to see the dividends as promised, So I understand the frustration, particularly in a time of economic hardship. That is the time when people question, the form of government that they practice. That's the time for them to question, why is this system not delivering for us? Why don't we have the type of education we need? Why don't we have the type of healthcare we need? So those are legitimate questions that citizens are supposed to ask. And those are legitimate questions that require answers from those who have been elected to govern. And so for me, it's really about creating those channels or refining those channels of accountability and information flow between citizens and government to ensure that at least people understand why they are experiencing what they are experiencing.
A reference point on the continent in terms of development has always been Rwanda. Everybody points to Rwanda and says, look at what's happening in Rwanda. Yes. It's a democracy over there, but we also know it's an antecedent of a military regime. And Paul Kagame himself, I think he shared of the military from not long ago, as if he's not still wearing it. That is what critics would use to say that is how we should go, and not the way that we are going here. And that if he's the example and he was a soldier or he's a soldier, then we should get a soldier here.
But we don't need Paul Kagame. I don't think that we are one of the champions of coup makers on this continent. Why don't we look at our own history of coups and see how far that took us? If there's anybody who can say that the periods of military rule, truthfully, without romanticizing the past, as we tend to do a lot. If somebody truthfully can say and prove that the periods of military rule actually we made more progress in those periods, then we can have a conversation. We don't need to go outside. We have experienced many different forms of military rule, and we know how far that took us.
So if it would work, it would have worked for us.
I don't know if it works. I'm not of that persuasion.
Okay, yes, you don't even agree in the first
No,
place.
I don't agree.
Okay.
I don't agree with that, because I think that democracy affords people the chance to participate, to have a say in their own destiny. When you elect your representative, you are electing somebody who goes to the seat of government to speak for you. When the time comes and you elect the head of your local government, for instance, you are electing somebody to whom you can hold account on a daily basis, as opposed to central government that may be far from you. So for me, it's about building the democracy. But I appreciate that is a difficult thing, and that going through those paces is like growing pains. It's very, very difficult. I don't think there's any country that has a democracy that we admire that didn't go through a difficult time in the beginning, or 30 years down the line had everything aligned and working perfectly.
I mean, even America's democracy is 200 years plus.
That's the democracy that is in so much trouble right now.
Just this weekend, they were electing a speaker in the House, and they
came to near blows.
Yes, exactly. So it means that it's always a work in progress. Yes. Let's look at the ills of the Constitution. So you have a difficulty with the election of MMDC. You think that they should be elected, not appointed. Yes. What other ills do you see in the Constitution? There are people who say this Constitution was created for Jerry Rawlings. It's no more. Change the Constitution. It was a concessionary Constitution that was created so that we can have a change of power from a soldier to a civilian. What do you think?
Which aspects of the Constitution, make us think that way?
Well, there are parts where there is immunity for AFRC members, PAGC members.
Where are they?
Yeah, they're gone.
Exactly.
Yes.
Let's move on.
We shouldn't worry about progress.
Yes, if you say that there were clauses in the Constitution that were placed there for the protection of one man, and the man does not even exist anymore, what is the fight here? That clause that does not apply to anyone else. You understand? I can understand that there needs to be changes, but and there's been a lot of talk about what the changes should be, and a lot of legitimate concerns raised. And I think that we certainly should be looking into that. But this particular point about the whole constitution being put together for one man, I don't know if that's actually true. It doesn't ring true, because it is a progressive constitution. If there were clauses placed in there, if there were concessions made, 30 years down the line, the main actors in that arena
are no more.
Are not here. So if we are going to quibble about the concessions that were made for them, and we really wanted those things removed, we really wanted a different sort of accountability from the military rulers that preceded the Fourth Republic, which have done that a long time ago. The time for that is past, because the people are not here anymore. And I think that I'm a very forward-looking person. So personally, I would say that those are not the most important things. Those are not the most important things. So
if we were to amend it now, you don't even think it's necessary to be bothered about those? Leave them in there.
No, it's necessary to write for the record and to write what people may see as an injustice.
Okay.
It is important, but it's not the essential thing right now. Of course, when the time comes and we are actually going through the process of review and changes, certainly, if that is the consensus around for Ghanaians that these things need to be changed, we certainly must do that. But that is not the foremost. Those are not the foremost things
we should be focused on.
Yes, because apart from everything else, the time is past and the main players are gone. We don't want to. We are not fighting ghosts.
Yeah.
We need to make progress. We need to be looking at the next 30 years, painting a vision or painting a picture of the life that we want for ourselves as a country, of the way we want our republic to be.
Even if having those clauses in the constitution would still be bringing grief to the.
And let me just say for now that saying that we should make progress, I certainly don't mean that we should ignore the pain and grief of the past. I will be the last person to say that I'm very, very passionate about all that happened, all the injustice, all those who did not feel like the wrongs that were done against them, that they received justice for that. I feel very strongly about it, and this is certainly not to diminish their pain or make their grief irrelevant or say that it doesn't matter. Of course it does matter, but maybe there's another way to handle it, to bring closure to certain categories of people. But in terms of the constitution and moving forward, there again, I'm not even saying that we should not change those clauses. I'm just saying that that's not the key thing right now.
This is Face to Face on City TV. My name is Omar Sandaman. My guest is Kathleen Addy. She is the chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education. We're just looking through our 1992 Constitution, which is 30 years old. There was an attempt to amend the Constitution in 2010. The amendment was done, at least the draft amendment was done, but it's currently sitting on some shelves somewhere and gathering dust. When we come back, I'll ask her whether we should just go back to that and implement that draft amendment, or there are few things or new things that we have to remove from the Constitution and add to our Constitution as we seek to strengthen this document. This is Face to Face. Please be with us.
It's City on the Go. You don't have to miss any of your favorite television and radio shows on City TV and City FM. Enjoy thrilling content from your world of great television and relevant radio at your convenience. Subscribe to CityTube on YouTube. Turn on your notification button and receive prompts on our live streaming sessions and new content uploads. For easy access to the CityTube page, scan the barcode on your screens. Subscribe to the CityTube page and voila! Unlimited content awaits you. Don't forget to subscribe to CityTube for amazing content from City TV and City FM.
Bank of Ghana has upgraded the One Ghana Cedi coin with enhanced security features. The coin will be put into circulation from 12th December 2022. It is similar to the existing 1 Ghana cedi coin in shape, form, and images. The coat of arms in front and the scale of justice at the back. The upgraded 1 Ghana cedi coin is bimetallic with outer gold and inner silver. The coin has a pronounced rough edge and incorporates a latent image which appears in a rectangular form below the scale of justice at the back. The latent image changes from a radiating star to a 1 Ghana cedi symbol sandwiched between 2 stars when tilted. The existing and the upgraded 1 Ghana cedi coins will co-circulate until the existing coin is gradually withdrawn. The general public is encouraged to accept the coins and use them.
You're welcome back to Face to Face on City TV. My guest is the chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education. If the Constitution should be amended, which is a discussion we are having now, what portions have to be removed? What needs to be added? Or everything has already been done in 2010 and we should just go back to that?
Okay, well, a lot was done in 2010. That was a very comprehensive. Work done, and there was a report and there was a white paper, and then it ended there. 2010 is more than 10 years ago already, and so if we are going to review and amend and move forward, we must review the 2010 work as well.
Okay.
Because there may be things in there that still no longer apply or are not relevant, or things for which, as a country, we have gained better insight. And so we would like to tweak a bit before we move along, because you cannot have these changes often. So when you have the opportunity, you must do all of it, and then make sure that you've covered all the bases. Last year we held a roundtable here to look at the white paper that came out of that process. Just a review of the white paper, and we had a couple of speakers. So there's some work around that already. Basically, there are many institutions doing work around this constitutional review issue, and so at some point we have to just put everything together, have a report ready, and then begin to delineate or put a roadmap in place for the next steps. Otherwise, at the beginning of last year, I said that what I don't want is for us to have all these conversations, and then the year will end, and then we'll start a new year with another set of conversations around reviewing the Constitution. Fortunately, we did just that. For us as NCCE, we set out our task. Well, the task we set out for ourselves was to raise the issue again, hold events around it, put together a report, and submit it to Parliament, which we put it together. Last year, our national dialogue was focused on the review of the Constitution, and then we held regional events across the country, also focused on review of the Constitution, getting people's ideas and people's suggestions and people's vision and all of that. After that, like I mentioned before, we had the roundtable later in the year. So we have all these bits and pieces of information that we are putting together in a report. There are other institutions that are doing some work around this as well. At some point, we need to stop the talk and begin to, look at what are the next steps, immediate next steps that will put us on a path to the actual reform happening.
If the 2010 review, that was done by a commission, right? Yes. There was a Constitution Review Commission. Yes, that was as high as it can get.
As high as it can get.
And all of that went to naught or became nothing. How can we revive that then? And why do you think it collapsed, that work that was done?
I don't really want to comment on that. All I know is that it's not lost because it's there. It exists. And fortunately, maybe if you want to look at it that way, a lot more information has been gathered, And so, in 2010, when that review was done, NCCE went around, every district held these town hall events, put everybody's, ideas on board, put everybody's, view and point of view. So all of that went into the final report. That's why I said it was a very comprehensive work that was done then. The report is still there.
But
I don't think
governments.
I don't think that all the opinions in there are irrelevant. Then we have the white paper that came out of it. All I'm saying is that we don't need to go to that kind of detailed exercise again. All that information exists.
But the issue is that our two leading parties that have been in power since '92, the NDC and NPP, have both been in power when this amendment was done. So NDC was in charge in 2010. The review was done. It has been left. NPP has come for 2 terms. Nothing has happened. It means that that review, that work that was done, based on this history I've just shared, may never be implemented. You are thinking, let's go back for that document and implement it. But it looks like it will not be.
I'm not actually saying let's go back and implement it without having another look at it. Definitely, that is an important part of any sort of actions that will be taken as far as constitutional review is concerned. That document can never be thrown away or cannot be made redundant or irrelevant. That's what I said, that is very detailed work that was done in 2010. And the NCCE was involved, went around all the regions and districts, held these town hall meetings, collected information, everybody's views, and all of it was collated and went into the report. So it's a very, very important report. It really carries the views of the people. And so we can never say that it's now irrelevant. But then again, we know that was 12 years ago now. 13 almost years. So some time has gone by, and if we are going to do this exercise, it is important that we relook at what we put in there and see whether it still resonates with the vision and aspiration of the people of Ghana today.
But my point is that may never happen.
Why would
my point is that...
Oh, you're making the point about the political parties.
Yes, because they have to drive it, right? Yes. It has to go through a referendum, doesn't it?
Yes.
So that referendum has to be organized by the Electoral Commission.
Yes.
The government has to say, the Attorney General has to say to the Electoral Commission that this is what we've done, go to town, tell people that they should vote on it.
That's what I'm saying, that at this point, we've talked enough. We've gathered enough information. What we need is a roadmap. What we need is a roadmap that, delineates the next steps. And I think that for all the organizations involved in the work around the constitutional reform, this is where the focus should be. I think we've talked enough, we've said enough. We have a clear idea of what we need to change, what we don't need to change. We have about the top 3 very popular changes that people think will help us. And we know, if you ask people to prioritize the list of changes, the top 10 will include something from everyone, so we know where we want to go with this.
Who will lead the charge for us?
Certainly not NCCE.
You cannot. You are not allowed to?
Not that we are not. Our mandate is one of education.
Okay.
We don't change constitutions.
Okay. Okay, it's not part of your power.
We educate on if we are going to go through a change process, we'll be part of the education.
Okay.
If we come up with changes, we'll be part of the education. And so, in terms of who will lead it, it's not us.
Okay.
Ours is to support whatever process that is put in place, because we have to bring the people, the citizens, along on the journey.
So would it be civil society, say a CDD leading this? Would it be...
No, it's more of government.
So it has to be multi-party, or it should be single government? Because if it becomes one government...
If you remember, the review was under President Mills.
Yes, NDC.
Yes, it was under President Mills. So a government has to actually take the decision to go forward in a particular way.
But from where you sit, and based on your knowledge of the civil society space, the document is still on the shelves. There's no work to move it out to the level of where we can go and put a thumb to vote and adopt or reject it.
I don't think we are quite there yet. We are not at that point yet. Like I said, there is a lot of information. All of that needs to be collated, and we need to have a list of priorities. And remember that even if we come to a point of a referendum, to suggest that all the issues, all the changes, all the amendments should be in one referendum is a tall order. Yes, because people may agree with one thing and not agree with the other. What I think would be ideal is to identify a couple, because also the truth is that we may not be able to accomplish all of the changes over one election cycle, for instance. So if we were to organize it in such a way that we know what we want to do, and we can say that this year we have to do 3, next year we will do another 3. That kind of roadmap, and then we go into the details of how to go about it, I think will be more practical. But if we look at it as the whole big thing and all the changes at once, and I suspect that's part of the problem, because we are looking at the entire big picture. If you take change of local government, my favorite subject, the last time we tried this amendment, it fell apart, it failed. But if you think about it, why did it fail? The contention was around whether the election should be done on a partisan or non-partisan basis. And meanwhile, in the Constitution, there are clauses that are entrenched and not non-entrenched. And if we can actually do this through the changes to the non-entrenched clauses and just get it done in Parliament without a referendum, that will only mean that we'll be electing the heads of local government on a non-partisan basis. I think it's a good first step. I think all the parties agree on that they should be elected. They should be elected. I think there's consensus around that. And so if we have to move forward, and that becomes even the first step, and then at a later date we may come to another point where we may say, let's do it on a partisan basis. That's fine. But for me, this is it's doable.
We should start from somewhere.
If we do that one, even that one, we will solve that problem, we'll solve other problems. We'll solve the other challenge that people see as so much power vested in the presidency, for instance. Because once you're electing the heads of local government, the president is not appointing anymore. All of those appointments were part of what was seen as too much power in the hands of the presidency. You understand? So if you do that, you can affect some other things. And so we must be looking at it strategically like that, because there's no way all of those amendments and suggested changes are going to go on one ballot and everybody's going to decide yes or no.
So we can embed it in general elections, in district level elections, and say that when you go to vote for your assemblyman or you vote for your MP, there's a second ballot where you decide to change this part of the constitution or not. Then that way we're making progress. So every election cycle we are bringing.
I don't know if the referendums are meant to be structured that way, because you have to remember that all these things are guided by law. So I can't speak on that. All I know is that we must do it in stages, and there are ones that we can do very quickly, depending if the amendment is on clauses that are non-entrenched. It's a matter of getting consensus in Parliament and get it over and done with. For the more serious ones that have to do with entrenched clauses for which we have to go to a referendum, we can isolate them and then take them, in stages.
But the question would be that if the amendment is taking 10 years plus to be implemented, maybe we don't need an amendment after all. Maybe we find the way we are. That is why nothing is happening. There's a good section of society that takes that position as well. That the Constitution is absolutely fine, that there are so many things that we don't implement. We have so many laws that we don't implement. And that if we were being faithful to the Constitution as it is now, we will not really have a problem. So that's a debate. So it's a debate. So there are people who say all kinds of things, but that is a very relevant point of view as well that a lot of people hold, that we need to focus on ensuring that we enforce the laws that we have today, and that enforcement of what exists today will actually make a big difference and will solve a lot of the problems that we think we have. This is Face to Face on City TV. My name is Umaru Sandamadu. My guest is the chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education, Kathleen Addy. We've been discussing the 1992 Constitution. Let's talk about the NCCE now, which is what she had. So your commission is a creation of the Constitution, Chapter 19.
Chapter 19.
And your job is to educate us on coronavirus, on weighing, all those things.
We have a very broad mandate. And again, I always like to go back and look at the time, what led to all of this. So we were coming out of military dictatorship, and for the generation of Ghanaians that were alive at the time, for a lot of people, that's all they had ever known. And the idea of a democracy was a bit theoretical or alien. And it's a very real challenge to live under military rule, and your worldview is shaped in a particular way. Under military dictatorship, it's one man rules, or one woman rules. And so
it's mostly one man rule. It's okay, don't gender.
maybe. You have this worldview that is skewed in a particular direction. Suddenly, overnight, because it's literally overnight.
They say that change.
We have a democracy. You now have to elect your MP. You have to elect a head of state. You have to, you have to understand political parties
you have
exist.
To contribute to
you have to contribute to development.
It's a culture shock.
It is a real cultural change, and so the framers of the Constitution wisely thought that let's have this institution that will walk the journey with the citizens and make sure that citizens understand the changes that we're going through. And so they set up the institution, and our mandate is very broad, but primarily we are supposed to ensure that this constitution holds, that Ghanaians understand it, Ghanaians accept it, and Ghanaians buy into the vision of the constitution, and then Ghanaians protect, have a responsibility to protect the constitution at all times. And then also to build a democratic culture where people understand democracy at the very fundamental level, the ideas of rule of law, the idea of equality before the law, the idea of rights for all, responsibilities, and all of those things, all those elements that go into a good democracy. So it wasn't just going to happen, One of my favorite sayings is that nobody is born a good citizen. Nobody is born a good citizen. Nobody is born waving a particular flag. You have to teach people what it is that the behavior that will be ideal for their survival and for the survival of their community. And so that is the role that the commission was given.
So in 30 years, would you say you played this role well?
I would say so. Before I joined the commission, I've been following the work of the commission for a long time. I would say so. A lot of the work that the commission does is obviously you cannot count the impact in terms of bricks and mortar. You cannot count. We did 3 blocks, we did 5 classrooms, and all of that. So it's a bit difficult to make a claim like that. But I know the work that the staff do. You know that NCCE is a highly decentralized institution. We have regional offices, and we have offices in every single district of the country.
When I was in Tama Secondary School, our regional director, or district director, it was called Zachary. I used to come and he was supervising our civic club.
Your civic clubs.
Yes. So I know about that one. You have the constitution games and all those things that people play.
So just to say that we are decentralized in that way. So the work that we do, a lot of it happens in communities. And outside of nice offices like this in Accra, in the regions and districts, we work in local language.
Okay.
And in every district, we have staff that speak the local language. And so our staff are part of the community. They are embedded, they are highly regarded. They play a huge role in serving as in arbitration, in conflict resolution, in bringing communities together around important issues. And so we play that role, and because everything is going well, we don't recognize that all this work goes into the peace and the
stability of the country. So things are going for the country, but for you yourself, in doing this work that you are doing, are you properly resourced? So are your district offices, you are mostly hiding in one district assembly, small room, they put you in there. That's the NCC office. You have a table and a chair, and the NCC officer has a motorbike, you'll be moving around, or you want pick up where you have megaphones on it making noise. Even at the headquarters, your office, you are hiding outside the National or Electoral Commission's offices. Is it the case that you are no more relevant to the country that we can use social media to educate people. We can use fellow Ghanaians to talk to people on GTV and every other TV station pipe is so NCCE cry, Charlie, let them be. Could that be the case? Because clearly you are not resourced.
Well, that's not the case.
Okay. You are resourced. You have money.
No. I mean, it's not the case that we are not relevant.
Okay.
That's what I mean. And to be honest with you, I think that if the clause, the NCCE was not an entrenched clause in the Constitution, maybe somebody would have, resolved it, because
maybe like a ministry, they will remove you when they feel like.
Yes, exactly. Because a lot of the politicians think in 4-year cycles. They want to see they want to be able to count some schools or some roads in 4 years' time, and so when they are deploying resources, they think about those things. But because of this 4-year mindset, we forget that the most powerful resource that we have really is the mindsets of the people. And if we neglect to do the investment in that powerful resource that we have, we are going to get to a point where you won't find the right people to build the roads, and you will not have the right contractors to build, and then the classrooms.
So build the mines using the NCCE.
Yes, build the mines using the NCCE. So NCCE will build the citizens that will build the country.
And that is your mandate, and that's what you mean.
Yes, and that is what it's supposed to be. Poorly resourced from day one.
It's always been the case.
Government in, government out. Always been the case. Very poorly resourced.
How bad is the picture now? Do you have vehicles?
Hardly.
So your regions, at least you should have a vehicle each in your regional offices.
It's hardly the case.
You know?
And even where we have vehicles, a huge chunk of the fleet is so old. We have cars that are from the 2000s, from 2004.
I came through your yard and I saw some of your very old vehicles.
And then what then happens is that maintaining and fueling those cars becomes very expensive. So the meager resources that we get, we then expend a lot of that on vehicle maintenance. The resource problem is deep, it's very deep. I always encourage government and politicians that nobody's saying you should do all of it in one day. But if all the political parties and governments commit to something every year, even the fleet, if every year we get, 30, 50, 10, 20, if you get some every year, in 4 or 5 years' time, you would have replenished the fleet adequately.
I know I didn't prepare you for this, but do you have off the fingers how many working vehicles you have? I'm referring to
get that for you.
Okay, so if you had it immediately, that would be fine. Yeah. So that the mobile vans that you use.
The mobile vans are very few. I think we have just about 2 or 3 now.
Nationwide.
Yes.
So how do you?
But what we do then, but that's for the cinema vans.
Okay.
That's the cinema vans.
Okay, the one you used to show. Okay.
Yes. But the audio one with the pickups, the horns mounted. Wherever we have the pickup, we have the equipment to put on the pickup. But we don't even meet the barest minimum of 1 pickup per district. We don't have that. We don't have 2 motorbikes per district. We don't have. There are districts that don't have either a vehicle or a motorbike. And I always say to my...
How did they survive then? What did
they walk. I was coming to that. They walk and use public transport. And I always say that where you don't have a car, your legs become...
So when they go to the community, they use their voice to project, or you have public address systems?
So it depends on what you're doing. Because sometimes you're going to the schools. You don't need a public address system for the club activities and the school activities. You don't need a public address system. You need a public address system if you are having maybe a very big town hall, a big deba or something. And we hardly do those things anymore. What we do is to plug into existing programs
and then use them
because it makes more sense financially that way. So there's that. You can go to the schools and use your voice, or where there are pickups. So maybe one district might have a pickup, but in terms of programming, they have to share with 2 other close-by districts. So they come up with a timetable on how to use it. That's if you're in the middle of a project. Or maybe in some places, one person is on the motorbike and there's another person behind with a megaphone and they go through the community. Or we use those communication centers that you have in communities.
The new community centers. I'm going to take a break, but but you have a card, right?
Yes, I do have a card.
Yes. You have 2 deputies.
I have 1 now.
Okay, but you're supposed to have 2 deputies.
Yes.
Does the deputy have a car?
Yes.
Okay, so at least at the head office you have your cars. Okay. Yes. This is Face to Face on City TV. When we come back, there's a big campaign they're supposed to work on NCCE, the district level elections. I'm sure you may not even know that your assemblyman is going to be voted for, but you know that in 2024, you even know who and who are going to run in 2024, but you don't know who's running for your assembly and your unit committee and so on. It's the NCC's job. We'll ask how they're doing that. And also corruption and governance. Do they teach people on corruption matters, and even in the government levels, why we still have corruption in town? Please stay with us.
Hello and welcome to the Effective Living Series 2023.
Another year is upon us, and we are poised to kickstart this new revolution with the utmost zeal. City TV and City FM present to you another rewarding season of the Effective Living Series. This year, the Effective Living Series will be riding on the back of the theme 2023 Starter Pack, Building Back Better. Every week in the month of January, our team of renowned experts, alongside our exceptional host Bernard Avlen, will delve into various thematic areas that have been carefully selected to cater to your holistic well-being in the coming year. Week 1 will focus on the importance of physical preparation for 2023. After that, we will take a look at emotional and mental health imperatives for 2023 in our second weekly series. Then, we will proceed to the third weekly series with emphasis on professional priorities for 2023. In our fourth and final week, we will dig into the strategic conversation on building financial foundations for 2023. The Effective Living Series will be live on the City Breakfast Show on 97.3 City FM at 9 a.m. and on Breakfast Daily on City TV at 9:30 a.m. from Monday through till Thursday. So join us and let's get ready to be equipped with practical information for building back better in 2023. The Effective Living Series is sponsored by Enterprise Insurance and Hallmark Freights and Logistics Ghana Limited.
Getting together for the first time in years was a little bit awkward. Grandpa still tried to entertain us. Mom was always stealing the spotlight from the kids. It wasn't until Grandma cracked a joke
That's my favorite prayer.
that we got back into our groove. In this festive, DSTV is making family time even better with an upgrade.
Stay connected to DSTV and we'll upgrade you to the next package for free.
You're welcome back to Face to Face on City TV. My guest is the NCCE boss. Our democracy is 30 years. What things are we doing that would affect the strength of this democracy that become a threat?
Okay, so 30 years down the line, it's always a good time to look at how far you've come, all the good things that have happened, and but it's also a good time to look at the future and say that moving forward, what are some of the things that can become huge impediments on our democratic journey or trajectory? And so when we give our statement on Constitution Day, we identified some threats to our democracy as it stands now. We talked about the fact that the politics has become heavily monetized. We have anecdotes and testimonies of vote selling and vote buying, right from the very in the party elections, right from the very basic elections up through all to the top, to the party executives. We have this issue where we get all these reports of vote buying and vote selling. It's a big threat to our democracy because it creates an atmosphere of governance for sale in our country. We also know how expensive it is to run for any political office in this country. Even if you are running for assemblyman, it's getting more and more expensive to be able to do that, and it puts public office beyond the means of majority of the people in the country, and that cannot be good, So the monetization becomes a threat in so many ways beyond the fact that it makes it impossible for people to aspire to public office. It also breeds corruption, and then the corruption filters into all other aspects of our life, and then it becomes a problem with other things. So, for instance, now that we face a huge security threat, corruption becomes a problem, becomes a vulnerability that we must deal with in doing, because if you have a culture of governance for sale, it means that people come into the communities and it will be easy to find people to buy, to do things.
The issue of corruption, you earlier talked about working on the minds of the people. As
Yes.
NCCE, could that not be a failure that you are not teaching people to not be corrupt, and that's why you're having too many corruption scandals?
So corruption is a deep thing. It's a cultural
I thought
problem.
you were going to quote someone who said corruption is as old as Adam.
Oh no!
Don't quote him.
No, I'm not going down that road. I didn't say that, Mario. You did.
I know. So is it a mindset thing, the corruption thing, or is it an economic issue?
No, it's not an economic. Well, it's not completely an economic. Nobody can take away the fact that when people become desperate, they are forced to do some things. But that is just one aspect of a multi-dimensional problem that corruption is. We used to have an anti-corruption project that was funded by the European Union for over a number of years, and I don't think that there's lack of awareness about what corruption is. I think when people are undertaking corrupt activities, they know what they are doing.
So you don't have to educate people on it?
No, it's not that we don't have to educate. There are several things that have to go together. There's education, there's law enforcement, there's people seeing consequences of doing the wrong thing, and those consequences being strong enough to be a deterrent. So there's a lot of awareness, maybe not 100%, but there's a lot of awareness. We want to see the other things, work together at the same time. So if an official, a public official, is found to be corrupt, we want to see that the consequences are so hard that before anybody goes down that road, they will think twice.
Okay. NCCE, so your mandate is education. I'm sure the district level elections would be a key project for you. But what other projects have you been engaging in?
Well, but before I get to that, that's just one of the threats. Let me talk about three. The other major threat that we face is illegal mining in Galamsey. That is a threat not just to our health, that is a threat not just to our environment, but it's a threat to our very existence as a country, because Galamsey will only lead us to the situation we found ourselves with in Liberia, Sierra Leone in the 90s. A big part of those wars were blood diamonds. Why do we have an expression like blood diamonds? We all know it's a bad thing, but we are going down the same path where you have a situation where the illegal mining is out of control. People develop their little militias to guard their territories. Then there's fighting. Then there's gun running because people need guns to arm their militias and then the whole society breaks down. Next thing you know, you have warlords. The threat of Galamsey is so huge because it will lead to warlordism.
Have you spoken to the government about this? This is a government that has said it to fight Galamsey. The president has put his presidency on the line. As NCCE, have you had frank discussions with the president to say this and this what we've noticed is a threat to our democracy and our existence?
I don't think that we don't know what Galamsey is, and I think the government has taken some steps. All I'm saying now today is that we shouldn't look at it, we shouldn't take it lightly. It's a real threat, and for Galamsey, it's not just about the democracy, it's about the very existence of our country. So the steps that are being taken to ensure that we are able to, reel that problem in, and we are able to halt going down that road, those steps must be strengthened. Okay. And if it is the role of government to ensure that we take all the necessary steps are in place to ensure that this Galamsey comes to an end. Okay. So the third major threat to our democracy today is violence extremism. And as you yourself know, in the West African sub-region, there's a lot of disorder, there's a lot of chaos right now. There are lots of countries that have been taken, or especially the countries of the Sahel, have ceded territory, a lot of territory to terrorists, who have, taken control of these swathes of territory in the Sahel. The terrorists are not people who do things and end. They are constantly working towards a certain agenda. And they are certainly looking south. They are looking to the coastal countries of West Africa. And so we have this real threat that we are dealing with as a country, and the epicenter being the northern border. As we know, Burkina Faso has problems right now with these terrorists. And there's a refugee crisis that is building. Ghana is taking in refugees from Burkina Faso. We don't know who is coming with them. You know, we have a real problem of
we can't shut our borders, should we?
Of course, we can't shut our borders. The borders are practically artificial in a lot of ways, because borders go through people's towns.
There's no wall.
There's no wall, but the borders go through people's communities. You can't put a line there. So ordinarily, there are border points, but there are areas of the border where it's very fluid, because it's a people's homes.
Community.
Yes, a community. You know. And so we have this problem that is building up there, and that problem is exacerbated by the internal problems that we have as a country. You know, so the discontent, the call for overthrow of the constitution, call for putting away the democracy, all of these things make us vulnerable to that external threat, because the way terrorists operate is to take advantage of your vulnerability.
And we need to pray, and we as the media will give you the support that you need to ensure the campaign goes on, and you also do what you have to do. Thank you so much for joining us on Face to Face. Madam Kathleen, Addy, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Umara, my good friend. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
My former friend, Kathleen, Addy, Chairperson of the National Commission for Civic Education. That's how we enter this edition of Face to Face on City TV. Do keep watching City TV. It's your world.